He liked inventions. He was always trying to invent something. If you go in his room, you may see wheels turning, lights blinking, motors going off and on. He was a very creative type person.
Or the time that he took my beautiful Longines watch and dismantled it piece by piece.
To see what make it tick.
I was irate. I didn't know what to do. We were scheduled to go down to South St. Louis to see Vera's mother, and he wanted to go. And I told him, boy, if you don't get my watch back together, it's going to be me and you. And I said, you can't go anywhere unless that watch is put back together and working perfectly. Well, an hour and a half later, Reginald had put the watch back together, and it ran perfectly.
Started out like a nightmare that is yet unfolding even today. And I got a knock on my door, and they said, well, we wanted to talk to Reggie. His name had come up, and I said, well, don't I need an attorney? Well, no, we just want to talk to him, and everything panned out and bring him back home. Well, he hasn't been back home since.
Late at night on April 4th, 1991, Antonio Richardson, Marlon Gray, Daniel Winfrey, and Reggie Clemons, who ranged in age from 15 to 23, went to hang out on the Chain of Rocks Bridge in St. Louis, Missouri. On the bridge, they met two sisters, Julie Carey, aged 19, and Robin, aged 20, and their 19-year-old cousin, Thomas Clemons. The two groups spoke briefly on the bridge and separated. Shortly afterwards, Julie and Robin plunged to their deaths into the Mississippi River. The cousin, Thomas Clemons, told the police that the youths on the bridge raped his cousins, robbed him, and that one of the youths then pushed the young women off the bridge and forced him to jump after them. Antonio Richardson, Marlon Gray, Daniel Winfrey, and Reggie Clemons were arrested a few days later. Richardson, Gray, and Clemons, all black youths, were found guilty. In Clemons' case, he was convicted for accomplice to murder. All three always maintained their innocence. All three were sentenced to death. Antonio Richardson's sentence was later reduced to life in prison. Marlon Gray was executed in 2005. Reggie Clemons remains on death row. Clemons' case is a checklist of the problems and errors inherent in the U.S. death penalty system. Two main witnesses testified against Clemons. Thomas Clemons was the cousin on the bridge. Police were initially suspicious of Clemons' story. Although he claimed he was forced to jump off the bridge, his hair appeared dry, neatly combed, and he was uninjured. Police were even more skeptical after Clemons took, and failed, a lie detector test. Under further interrogation, Clemons told police that the Careys had fallen from the bridge as a result of an argument that began after he made a sexual advance on one of them. Clemons was arrested and charged with the murder of his two cousins. Later, Clemons met with prosecutor Nels Moss. Afterwards, Clemons identified Richardson, Gray, Winfrey, and Clemons as the youths he encountered on the bridge. Charges against Clemons were dropped. On April 2, 1993, Reggie Clemons was sentenced to death. On that same day, Thomas Clemons filed a police brutality lawsuit alleging that his initial confession had been beaten out of him. The suit settled out of court for $150,000. Daniel Winfrey was the fourth teenager with Clemons, Gray, and Richardson. Winfrey, the only white youth of the group, pled guilty to a lesser offense in exchange for testifying against the others. Winfrey is free today. Reggie Clemons confessed to participating in rape during his interrogation, but not to participating in the deaths of the women. He retracted the statement afterwards and reported being beaten into confessing. Several witnesses saw Clemons with a swollen face after his interrogation. The judge presiding over his arraignment hearing even ordered him to be brought to an emergency room. Despite Clemons' allegation that his confession was coerced, the confession was admitted at trial and treated as evidence. The prosecutor, Nels Moss, was found in criminal contempt for ignoring court orders during trial. Multiple state and federal judges have criticized Moss, and his misconduct has been cited in at least 24 cases. A federal court that reviewed Clemons' case described Moss's conduct as abusive and boorish. The state never presented any physical evidence tying Clemons to the crime. Even the prosecution admitted that Clemons did not kill the victims or plan the crime. Clemons' defense lawyers failed to adequately investigate the case or uncover key evidence in preparation for his trial. A federal court that reviewed the case ruled that Clemons' death sentence should not stand because of the improper exclusion of jurors, all but 2 of whom were white. Yet a higher court overturned this ruling on technical grounds. Clemons was scheduled for execution on June 17, 2009. The execution was stayed by the Missouri Supreme Court. The court assigned a judge called a special master to investigate the case and answer key questions about whether Reggie Clemons' conviction is reliable and whether a sentence of death is proportionate. Reggie Clemons has a critical hearing scheduled for March 2012, which may ultimately determine whether Clemons receives a new trial, whether he is taken off death row, or whether Reggie Clemons remains at risk of execution.
But the fact is, they can't shut him down because there's voices and there's people that care.
Since Reginald isn't dead, we're still in the game.
We have chosen to stand up and fight for justice because it's something that we feel that everyone needs and deserves. And we're not going to quit. And no one's quitting with us, so I'm just real thankful.